you able to turn down the volume?
I hear the music.
Hello and welcome to Dateline New Haven on WNHH-FM, New Haven's home for community radio. I'm Paul Bass, inviting you to look behind the headlines on the stories that make our community tick. Well, a big story in some of our lives, starting this Sunday night, is Hanukkah. Annual celebration of lights is one way to call it. And we have two gentlemen here in the office who lead communities, Jewish communities in our area, in which we will find out what Hanukkah is all about, what they're up to this year, and how we think about finding light in our lives in 5783. Good morning to Rabbi Brian Immerman of Congregation Michigan, Israel, and Rabbi Eric Woodward of Congregation Beth El Kesser, Israel. Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you so much for coming in.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
What I'm going to ask you guys to do is to get so close to those mics that you're almost touching them, but not quite. And so, everyone has heard of Hanukkah, right? I mean, I remember being in grade school and we had the Hanukkah song, even though almost nobody was Jewish and all that kind of stuff. But I don't know if people really know what Hanukkah's about besides lighting a menorah. Like, you're talking about this, Brian, before we went on the air. Like, what is the story and this holiday we're celebrating starting Sunday night? What's it all about?
It's a great story of the Greeks oppressing the Israelites and the Israelites overcoming that oppression. And that freedom, that liberation is a theme that I talk a lot about, especially with kids. It's part of the Jewish narrative of they tried to prevent us from being Jews, and we were able to be free with the Egyptians.
And then we ate.
And then we ate,
Yeah.
right, of course, with the latkes, and we'll get to the food in a little bit. And I think part of that then compels us living in 2022 to help fight for liberation and religious freedom for people around our world.
Yeah.
And I guess the story there was that the Maccabees were leading the resistance, and they were in the temple, and the supposed miracle is they were lighting the menorah again, and there was only enough there for 1 or 2 nights, but it lasted for 8 nights, which is why we then use oil to light for 8 nights. Eric, is that really what happened?
Yeah, so the story is like a little bit, cooked, maybe you would say. It's an interesting story. The whole thing is about 2,200 years ago, as Rabbi Immerman was saying, the Greeks, the Seleucid Greeks had this very imperialistic culture. Like, everybody had to be kind of Greek. Everybody had to sort of do Greek things. And their ruler, Antiochus, didn't want the Jews to do the various Jewish things. And there was a lot there that was complicated. There was like a push and pull. There were things that were wonderful about the sort of emerging Greek culture, and there are things that were kind of challenging for people. In the texts from the time, there isn't a lot about the menorah. But a couple hundred years later, we start getting Jews talking about this menorah. And
Also, originally, that wasn't part of it.
That wasn't originally part of it. So a menorah is a lamp that's in the temple. It was a lamp with sort of 7 or 8 branches on it. And it stood in the temple, and you had to operate it with this pure oil. And the Greeks made some of that oil impure, and so they couldn't do it, and it lasted for 8 days after the Maccabees, who were the sort of Jewish rebels at the time, sort of reconquered the area. What this basically symbolizes is the struggle itself, right? So basically what happens is you have this story of a war, and the story itself is symbolized through this image of the Jews tried to burn this light for 8 nights, and they brought light at a time when there was a lot of darkness. And the aspect of me that says, like, maybe the story is cooked a little bit is that the symbol is kind of perfect and loving and beautiful, and it was written later on because we don't really want to celebrate like a war holiday. You kind of want to celebrate a holiday about light and
Right, one night
connection.
we light one night the first candle, the first 2 candles the second. It's really fun for a kid, right? Like,
Right.
it's you light the candle, you see the kid's face light up and all that kind of stuff. I love that,
Yeah, totally. It's a
But of course, the
fun holiday.
Maccabees were bad dudes, right? I mean, and that happens a lot of time with revolutions. You overthrow the oppressor, but then the people who were hardcore enough to lead the resistance were the ones who take over, and then when they take over, they repress everybody else. Am I wrong about that, or is that
We
propaganda?
ignore the genocide that happens afterward,
Yeah.
just as we often end the story of Purim with Esther saying,
Right.
and the Jews were free, ... And we ignore the genocide that happens after that as well.
And so, okay, but does that give a lesson too about maybe when we want to free ourselves from oppression, it isn't just about overthrowing someone who's oppressing us, but
Yeah.
excising oppression from within our midst, or the lust for power, or is that overreading into the story?
No, I think that's exactly right. I mean, I think, part of the story is that when you run a civil war, the people who are able to win a civil war are not necessarily the people you want to be governing the new country. And that's something that happens in the sort of historical piece of this. But I think it's like an individual spiritual lesson too. Like sometimes in our own lives, we have experiences that are like a war or like a really hard thing. And when we have peace or we have some wholeness after that, maybe that same like wartime attitude is not the right thing, right? Maybe we want to think about bringing light. I'm thinking about this is a silly metaphor, but I'm thinking about in The Godfather, how Robert Duvall's character, they say he's not a wartime conciliary. He's not the right advisor for a time of war. He's the advisor for a time of peace. And I think one of the sort of Maccabee and Hanukkah lessons is that, yes, there are times to really stick up and stand up and say, gosh, like there's imperialism and there are all these things. And there are also times to think about, like, when is the struggle that I'm facing actually a spiritual struggle and a personal struggle, not necessarily a political struggle. And these things are always in play. It's not an either or, but how do we make that work?
We're talking about Hanukkah here on Dateline New Haven. It's our Sunday night, last 8 nights. And we're here with Rabbi Brian Emmerman of Congregation Michigan, Israel, and Eric Woodward, Rabbi of Congregation Beth El Kesser, Israel. So when I was growing up, everybody kind of grew up that Hanukkah is sort of the Jewish Christmas, but not, because around the same time of year, and we live in a culture where for months now, you hear all the Christmas songs, the Christmas lights, you got the big tree. And well, the Jews got Hanukkah. And then I was shocked to find out as an adult that it's a minor holiday. So it's not like the festivals where we don't work, where we have all this time spent in synagogue, whether it's the days of awe or even Sukkot is a much bigger deal. Passover is a much bigger deal. And yet I feel there's a tension in our culture about how to view it that way. Like I always say to people, well, it's not a major holiday. Like I go to work and yeah, it's nice. We sing the extra Hallel prayer in shul. We light the menorah. We spin a dreidel. It's kind of fun, all these traditions. But do you think it's been elevated because of our role in this culture? Like, what do you think, Rabbi Emmerman?
No question that it's been elevated and it's compared to Christmas, and that's always this tension. But we live in a world in which there are people who are celebrating many faiths and many traditions within one home. And Hanukkah has just taken its place. In my mind, people always say, when is Hanukkah going to be this year? It's on the 25th of Kislev,
right,
which is often a tongue-in-cheek answer, but it's on the 25th of Kislev.
Because it's different on the American calendar, because we have a lunar calendar rather than the Roman calendar. But I actually think about that point. I always think it's kind of nice when it includes Christmas because it's a day for Jewish families to have something. But I wonder if that's a mistake in approaching it that way.
I think it's a mistake to begin the conversation that way. But we have these two holidays, and Christmas has really become an American holiday in some way. And I know that there are many families who celebrate Christmas, but there's so much about Hanukkah to celebrate and to find joy in that we don't have to find joy in just comparing it to Christmas. But the beauty is that, you were talking a little bit about when are we called to lead at certain times in certain groups, and the word Hanukkah means to dedicate, lechanech, because they rededicated the temple in Jerusalem. And what I've learned about that light is this cruse of oil, this little bit of oil that was only supposed to last one night. It wasn't that it wasn't physically pure, like it wasn't as though they diluted it with other things. It was that it was the only last pure kosher bottle that had been dedicated to the purpose of lighting the menorah. And I was thinking, when Rabbi Woodward, you were talking, I was thinking about what does it mean for us to dedicate ourselves? And, we have these two quasi-American holidays where, you obviously have the Toka menorah elsewhere. And you have this holiday that brings light into the darkest time of the year. And what do we see with families doing Christmas? They're putting up lights so that...
And I do like the Christmas lights. I have to admit, I always like the Christmas lights.
Well, we don't have much light from the sun right now. So,
yeah. And it looks so pretty at night with the colors.
Yeah, and it allows us to think about how do we dedicate ourselves to bringing light into the world and into other people's lives at this time of year.
Yeah, I mean, I figure that, I think there are no small holidays. There are just small Jews. But that, Hanukkah, yeah, it's a minor holiday compared to Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur, but it's still a big deal. And
8 nights.
It's 8 nights long, and it's a lot of stuff that you do. And, try cooking latkes in your house for 8 nights.
And latkes are potato pancakes
Latkes are
and a lot of
potato
oil.
pancakes that you
My
fry in
father always
oil.
said you're supposed to have a little blood in it. When he's in the Army down south, they went to the Jewish home where like the person you grate the onions
the
and the potato. That was
Latkes
really
are definitely
simple.
better hand grated, but you'll get a little skin in there. But I do think it is. It's not a coincidence that Hanukkah is on the 25th day of the month of Kislev, which is the Jewish month, and that Christmas is on the 25th day of December, because both of these were sort of the Hanukkah date and other things were kind of affixed at a time when the Roman holiday of Saturnalia was also on the 25th day of this month.
Oh.
And Saturnalia's observance was to actually put lights in your window, which is something we can see that Hanukkah is doing and that Christmas is doing. So I would not say that Hanukkah is the Jewish Christmas or Christmas is the Christian Hanukkah.
They're both the religious
both
Saturnalia.
the
And isn't
Saturnalia.
that true with other holidays like Sukkot, that we co-opted existing agricultural or other holidays
This one is worse than
to add
others.
us? Oh, really?
Yeah, this
to
one
kind of
is...
claim ownership for it? Because they're already doing Sukkot where they were coming out of the fields at harvest time, right? If I have it right.
Yeah.
And that we wanted to put Jewish on top of it so that kind of convinced people to stay in their religion and incorporate their rituals.
Yeah, we wanted to ritualize it.
Yeah.
And I think
And give meaning to it. Maybe
Yeah, I
there's
don't
nothing
think-
wrong with that.
No.
No.
And I think, that's what we are. We're ritualists. We seek to imbue meaning into people's everyday through meaning and traditions and rituals.
And what's that meaning now? Like we always talk about COVID. That's not the only thing going on in the world, but there's been this attendant impact on people's emotional health. I'm guessing that as rabbis, you're both spending more time than maybe you would have 10 years ago with people trying to cope with uncertainty in their lives and mental health challenges, or just, I could be wrong about that. Does Hanukkah fit into that? I mean, it's not the same thing as Days of Awe, where it's like the big moment of the year, or Passover, going to Seder's and things like that. But how does COVID or any of what's going on now fit into how we're seeing Hanukkah this year? And it's okay if the answer is no.
I think this idea about minor holiday. So it's a minor holiday because it doesn't exist in the Torah. It comes from the Book of Maccabees, which we only have because of it's in the Apocrypha. And what's fascinating is actually the reason it's 8 days in the Book of Maccabees is because they missed celebrating Sukkot in the temple, so now they get to celebrate Sukkot. So as we're comparing holidays, there's this whole thing about Sukkot and
That's right, I forgot about that.
which invites the idea of fragility you were getting back to. So, and again, it's the darkest days of the year, right? No matter where you live, in the Northern Hemisphere, it's the darkest days of the year. And what do? We bring light into our world symbolically, but it also invites us to come together to, have special food of sufganiyot, which are jelly donuts, or latkes, the potato pancakes, and just gather and be together when we're worried in modern context, as we have our secular New Year, the American New Year, we're maybe worried about next year. What is the new year going to bring? And certainly COVID has elevated that. In 2020, we couldn't gather inside, so I asked a few builders in the congregation to build this giant menorah and put it out on our lawn, which is hopefully going to be a tradition forever because it's now this beautiful additional way for people to gather. And there's still people who can't gather for many reasons, if they're immunocompromised or just afraid. And we hope that everybody is able to come together. And I know that that's from all the synagogues in the area.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I was thinking as you were saying that there's a Jewish midrash, which is like a story from 2,000 years ago about this experience that Adam had. Adam, the first human being, that as he saw the days growing shorter at the beginning of creation, he'd never seen winter before, and he thought the world was just going to go out. They were going to keep getting shorter. So he started lighting these lights, and every year they would symbolize the light coming back into the world by lighting a candelabra for 8 nights. And to a certain extent, I think this is the Jews of 2,000 years ago trying to explain why we have holidays that also look like the this Roman holiday. And I'm sure the Romans with Saturnalia, like, that was based on other things too. And I think that this image of trying to find experiences of light at a time of a lot of stress is just so endemic to the human experience. And, there's the COVID stress right now. I think we have the stress of political upheaval, which has been really present for us for a long time, even before January 6th. And I think there's also, there's been a rise in anti-Semitism recently, and a sort of rise in anti-Semitic actions and speeches and things like that. And that's very scary. And Hanukkah, I think, tells us that really the core way to face this is to be that light that you need to see. Be proud and be Jewish and be safe being, be comfortable being out as a Jewish person. But the best way to show that you're Jewish isn't about the t-shirt that we're wearing or the kippah that we're wearing or whatever, but it's about bringing light and goodness to the world and saying like, wow, this Torah inspires me to live, our sacred texts inspire us to live in ways that are good and beautiful and meaningful to people. And, that's really what Hanukkah is all about, that and fried food.
Fried food. And we're talking about that about Hanukkah on Dateline New Haven, WNHH New Haven's home for community radio on 103.5 FM live stream, newhavenpin.org. We're talking to Rabbi Eric Woodward of Congregation Beth El Kesser, Israel, Rabbi Brian Immerman of Congregation Michigan, Israel. We also talk about miracles. So the dreidel, the game where we do the top and has 4 letters on it that mean Nes Gadol Hayasham, meaning a great miracle happened there. And Israel, they have the pay instead, a great miracle happened here. So the miracle is the oil, correct?
Yeah, the miracle is the oil.
So where do you go with miracles and the role of miracles in this holiday and role of miracles in our life now? Do we believe in miracles to relieve some of that stress and be light? Or do we see what we're able to do as a community together as the miracle and the light?
In the Reform prayer book, right before we pray the Amidah, there's a reading that says, pray as if everything depends on God, act as if everything depends on you. And there's some funny stories about this, but this idea that we should pray to God and we should hope in collective power and that a miracle might happen unexpectedly from some other power, but we then have to do the work. And what often happens is when we sit down and we say, okay, God, we hope that we're going to begin to end homelessness. We then go back to our meetings and form coalitions to end homelessness and create more affordable housing. And all of a sudden the miracles happen. And divine inspiration flows through us, right? We're manifestations of the divine. And ultimately, Hanukkah is the story of hope over hate.
Yeah, I mean, Jews, exactly right. That's a beautiful sort of intention for the Amidah. We're not so into miracles. And I once learned from a friend of mine, Rabbi Jason Rubenstein over at Slivka Center, that in Judaism, we don't define a miracle as something that's supernatural or something that's crazy or impossible. A miracle is just the experience of you were in a scary situation and you were saved. And that's what our tradition really calls a miracle. So you don't have to have it be inexplicable or magical in order to call it a miracle. A miracle is any time you say, gosh, it was a miracle. Love triumphed over hate. That's not inexplicable, but that's powerful. And that's what we're really celebrating on
As Brian
Hanukkah.
said, there's that fundamental tension in our religion that we pray that God is in charge of everything, in terms of everything, but in fact, we have agency and it's up to us to do the work. Right. So we have to kind of make our miracles, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Right. If I would, I don't think I can sing in canto songs without getting us in trouble. But, we talk about a miracle. It's not the magic that we have or don't have, but it's what we do with ourselves.
Mm-hmm. The miracle is you.
And
just you.
If I sang the song, my daughter would now watch the
I know, right? I can
Yeah.
sing it for the rest of this time.
And as for dreidel, I never quite got the game. So, if you get one of the letters, you start with these chocolate coins, because we have chocolate coins on Hanukkah. And it's like like poker, right? And if it's a nest, I think you put one in, and you have to take one out of the pot if you get another, or you lose all of them. And it seems like the game in practice doesn't have that many different
I think the real
ways
miracle,
it could go.
The real miracle of Hanukkah is managing to have a dreidel game that ends in under an hour and a half.
Yeah.
I mean, there was an article, I think in Slate or something, about somebody suggested rules to amend the game of dreidel to make it mathematically work out, because you put one in and you roll again and you take a coin out, and everybody's kind of in this weird equilibrium, and
Doesn't
but
quite
more
work
power
out.
to you if you want to play dreidel.
What about in your congregations? What are some of the plans that you have for celebrating Hanukkah this year?
We continue this long-running tradition on this coming Sunday. There's a group of congregants who are going to gather at East Rock Park, and we're going to walk up the park with a torch. When we get to the top, we're going to light the torch, rain, shine, sleet, snow, ice, and then we run from the top of East Rock to Mishkan, Israel, which is about 2.5 miles. And then we use that light, and we perpetuate the myth that torch came from Modi'in. We found it while they were excavating. So this torch has been around since Hanukkah.
How many people do this?
10,
Really?
15,
you run
20?
the 2.5 miles?
I run.
Wow, you're in good shape. You have all these people running around 2.5 miles in the dark?
Oh, well, it's at 8:15 in the morning.
Oh, 8:15 in the morning.
We do it in the morning. It's part of the religious school. And we have kids and adults.
And the kids run 2.5 miles?
Kids run. If you check out the CMI Facebook page, you can find a video that I just created from last year's run showing what this run looks like.
But the kids can run 2.5 miles.
Mm-hmm.
They're in good shape.
This is about inclusion. So we make sure that everybody is included. And
there's no like cars
nobody
coming
gets
by,
left.
you get hopped in? Or
I don't divulge the secrets.
Okay.
That goes
it's a miracle.
It's a
That's
miracle.
a wonderful tradition.
Yeah, so we do that. And then the kids in the religious school line the halls and they sing Hanukkah songs as we run in, and then we get to celebrate Hanukkah together. And we're going to have bounce house and latkes. And then throughout the holiday, we're going to be lighting this menorah outside the synagogue, and then ultimately culminating in a dinner. And then on December 25th, Mishkan Israel partners with the New Haven Capalia to welcome them for a concert for those who don't have anything else to do on December 25th in the afternoon.
I thought it was Afro-Semitic experience. Did that change? Or?
I think it's always been the Capalia.
Oh, so it's been the Capalia. Okay, some of the same folks, same DNA.
It's David Shevin.
Yeah. Who is the music? I didn't know if you noticed at the beginning of the show that was Afro-Semitic experience doing Eliyahu Hanavi, which is the theme song of this program. What about our? Cause I do belong to Congregation Beth El Kesser Israel, where we love Rabbi Eric. What are some of the things planned there?
I mean, we are not doing anything as cool as that run, but maybe next year we'll do some version of it from West Rock. Yeah, that is really a great idea. That's awesome. We had a Hanukkah party for the religious school last night. We have some singing on Sunday. We have more singing on Tuesday. We had latkes last night. You know, it's a little bit funny this year because Hanukkah is winding up at a time that doesn't exactly line up with the people's school schedules. So you're sort of trying to find ways to do things at the beginning of the holiday, and being aware that the weekend of the 25th is not a great weekend for people being in town necessarily. There's always this question with these 8-day holidays: do you do all the programming at the beginning or at the end, and when do you do it? But it's a fun holiday. A lot of Hanukkah stuff is home based too. I mean,
right, you're supposed to put as long as you don't burn the
You're supposed to put your
curtains.
menorah, your candelabra in your house, and really ideally in your front window, but whatever makes sense in your geography. Your Saturnalia, exactly.
So you know what my favorite part of Hanukkah is? My favorite part is like all the fun stuff about Judaism, the fun stuff of our ritual that I didn't know growing up. And you discover like some of the Sukkot stuff. So on Hanukkah, every day in our prayers we sing Hallel, which is so much fun to sing. It's a special kind of praise, very tuneful prayer, and you do it every of the 8 days long Torah reading. And I love when you at the synagogue at Becky, before the evening service, the small daily Mincha Mariv service, I guess it's Mariv this time of year, we go in the hall and we light the candle together and sing the couple of prayers in the kind of space you're in all year. There's darkness in it and it lights up and you're kind of together. I kind of love the small binding rituals that are just fun in Judaism. Those are my two favorite parts of Hanukkah.
Totally. And I think that's partially why Hanukkah is so powerful. It's like a lot of holidays have a lot of moving pieces to them, like making a Passover Seder. That's like a big task, Rosh Hashanah services.
Hanukkah's chiller.
It's chill, right? You've got this candles, you light the candles, you have delicious food, you say like a small number of prayers, but the meaning, they're so packed with meaning. So I'm a Hanukkah, I stand Hanukkah.
Also, you have the 8 days, so you don't have to pack it into just one day.
Right.
If you burn the latkes one night, you just make them the next day.
Right. You're going to have 7 bad Hanukkah experiences, but the 8th one will be good.
Oh, what a pleasure. You got me psyched now. I'm ready for Hanukkah. I might follow from a distance on Facebook what they're doing, Michigan Israel with the run, but I really...
Come join us.
Right.
Send a reporter.
Any final thoughts on Hanukkah before we close out? And thank you so much for joining us.
Just to say that, you can fry a lot of things, so you don't have to just be limited to potatoes. Think about other foods you can fry, but do it safely. Skip the deep fried turkeys.
Anything else, Brian?
Think about how you can be that light. What are you going to do to bring light into other people's lives?
Well, thank you for bringing light into Dateline New Haven, both of you. And you really did. You always do. It's always such a pleasure to chat with Rabbis Brian Immerman of Congregation Michigan Israel and Eric Woodward of Congregation Beth El Kesser Israel. 2 reasons we're so lucky to live in New Haven. And I want to thank Nora for filling in for Harry at the controls here. We're going to take it out with the Afro-Semitic Experience performing I Wish I Knew How It'd Feel to Be Free from the group CD, A Plea for Peace. This is Paul Bass inviting you to fly free with us all day, all night, and all weekend long at WNHH, New Haven's home for community radio.